from an undisclosed location in the Great Western Desert in the land of the free and autonomous Native American people, the 2024 presidential campaign in exile to return all US land back to their rightful owners. This is the Ben Zion Podcast. Techno-communism will win.
Welcome back to the Techno-Communism Show. I'm sitting out of doors in my second or third most favorite spot for doing this, which isn't that pretty. It's a parking lot, but it's a block from my house, so I sometimes come sit over here. And hopefully I'm sitting on the ground on a big fat pillow on a couch cushion. So hopefully won't be bit by ants. Sometimes I sit here and as I'm getting into some subject, I'm assaulted, and that will tend to distract me. It is an unusually warm day, even in these hottest of days. It's kind of silly for me to probably wear this hat, but I love that snake so much. It rained here in Center City, Phoenix last night. While it was raining, I said, "Remind me, Alexa, what's the weather forecast? Is there rain expected? Is there going to be any rain around here?" She said, "No, there's no rain expected. It's not raining." I said, "We just got half an inch of rain in 10 minutes." But there you have it. That's made it more humid. So our record high temperatures are compounded further by this. I thought I would. Well, that's a lot of explosion sounds. That's somebody, typical Phoenician riding around in their hot rod type vehicle, I guess. This channel has gotten more subscribers lately, even by my standards, that is. Almost all of those people are people who are interested in seeing these voice fakes that I make. I make musical voice fakes from time to time where I'll give a popular song a voice of Freddie Mercury, something like that. Donald Trump sometimes, others. If you've subscribed to this channel for that, I suggest you watch the Techno-Communism Show. This planet is dying. This humidity that I'm complaining about is indicative of a larger problem. We've had literally 20 of the hottest days on record, consecutively breaking those records across the world, not just here in Phoenix. If it were just here in Phoenix, we would be lucky, because even though about 300 people have died from exposure to this heat in this year alone, if that were merely an isolated incident, some kind of Death Valley type effect limited to my city, that would not be such a foreboding thing for the rest of you, because this planet is dying, and that is directly the result of a deeply flawed and elitist set of systems, economic system, an inhumane and unsustainable economic system that we so charitably call capitalism, and that is forced upon the rest of the world to a high degree by this imperial fascist United States, whose military-industrial complex is itself the world's worst polluter. But of course, as I say, it's much worse than that, because it protects other super polluters at gunpoint. And this is not something that we can allow, and it's something I'm going to talk about again, and I've probably done for quite a similar show a few times before. If you watch this show, you might see some recurring themes there. But I was thinking some more about these folks, the United States Transhumanist Party, and some parallels between them and other bogus organizations. If you watch what's trending on Twitter, you might have noticed that within the past 48 hours, the word libertarian has trended more than usual, and that is because whoever controls the account of the New Hampshire state Libertarian Party basically got in a flame war with a black woman I don't agree with on everything. Her name is Nina Turner. She's a Democrat, which I take exception to. But she is someone who is stated in no uncertain terms that she's willing to fight for a humane and sustainable economic system. And in the course of those conversations with this libertarian fascist, cryptofascist, she stated that basically that humankind, and this country specifically, should be using our resources to build state-run projects that would save lives, like a public health service. It's a common sense statement in other parts of the world, but in a place that's um, just swarming with crypto-fascists and elitists like the United States, this is a controversial statement. So this lovely human being of the New Hampshire Libertarian Party basically engaged in a lot of vicious race baiting, saying that she, this black woman, a descendant of enslaved people, a group of people who have their lives cut short by the effective continuation of chattel slavery and these more confusing forms, which are very real. The United States is a top three apartheid country in the world, and there's all manner of things along the lines of redlining, forcing people tracking in schools, forcing people not to have the things that they need to thrive and build a better world. And that is, and black folks and brown folks, particularly Chicano folks and Native folks, are the target of this overwhelmingly. This bad treatment, this very, very bad treatment. And so this woman, who is a dark-skinned woman, was herself called a slave driver by this crypto-fascist, who is quite realistically much more a slave driver than almost anyone on earth. And I was thinking about my interactions with the so-called libertarian socialists. I've had some attempts to organize with people like this. A lot of my attempts to organize with people have been stymied by realizing that there's not even a thread of serious people among them. There's not even an organizing capacity among them. So these libertarian socialists, they're people who are just crypto-fascists of a slightly less egregious variety than these people like the New Hampshire Libertarian Party. Why am I saying this? Because this is the most newsworthy thing that's happened in some time with libertarians, and it's pretty well a recurring theme. They'll be trending for saying something really, really asinine along those lines every year or so, and that's really the extent of their work. And why this is an organization that was founded just over 40 years ago in the United States by billionaires to do what anarchists, unfortunately, do the world around, but created by this professional managerial class to do it in a more precise way. And that is what anarchists, unfortunately, do the world around, is run interference for the people who are willing to fight for a humane and sustainable economic system by saying that those people, communists, are somehow too authoritarian to be more. This is something that's been exploited not just in the 1970s, 1980s, 1990s, and until today, but for many centuries. It's a shortened version of the story, but there's a man named Napoleon Bonaparte, and one of his good buddies within his organization came to him and said, "We found some anarchists," and he said, "What the fuck is an anarchist?" And his buddy says, "Well, these are people who don't believe in any institutions, and they don't like you, but their main thing is that they don't believe in the organizational structures at all. So what should we do about this guy? Should we just kill him?" And Napoleon says, "No, you know what? We're not going to kill him. We're going to prop these organizations up because there are people who actually are smart, who could stand to have maybe present a real challenge to our power. So what we'll do is we'll prop these guys up and have people sheepdogged into this inherently flawed worldview so that they don't become communists, proto-communists. Of course, the Communist Manifesto and major Marxist works, as we understand them today, had not been written at this time around the year 1800. So this is why I take exception to people like the United States Transhumanist Party, because there's a huge number of parallels between them and this billionaire-run libertarian farce. this planet is dying, right? We don't have a luxury that we may have had in the year 1800 of um, of, of, of being being doing these half measures as libertarians, and they're not even. But let's say there are some real libertarians and real right transhumanists in the world. These are people undertaking half measures. Now, the Libertarian Party and the Transhumanist Party, they're not just ill-conceived people. They're bad actors. I found an ant on me. Um, they are most decidedly bad actors, and this is something that I did not come to realize in my immediate association with these people. But it is something that I was forced to recognize at the beginning of 2020 when there was a pandemic spreading around the world. And this Transhumanist Party, which has almost all of the people of influence in that organization, are people who are cops, literal people working for American three-letter agencies or right-wing think tanks who are just barely one step removed from being those same cops. And what was this organization doing at this time? Well, the founder of this organization was lying to people and telling them that taking basic steps to build a stronger economy overall and protect human lives, which is the same thing, would have slowed the singularity. He was tweeting this 100 times a day. People at this time were tweeting a huge amount of silliness, rightists, because they recognized that without them just drowning out common sense, people would be advocating for things like public health service or advocating for things like stopping the airlines dead in their tracks so that there was no real possibility of a pandemic spreading around the world. That could have easily been done. It would have hurt virtually no one to do that, but it would have hurt private capital, and it would have set this precedent of stopping private capital from doing damaging things, which of course no capitalist will ever do. And that is why this planet is effectively doomed unless we take serious action against these very people. And what was the other neoliberal, major neoliberal representative of the Transhumanist Party doing at that time? Well, Gennady Stolyarov, the chair of that party, was as soon as he heard about the coronavirus outbreak, was writing a very long series of essays, obnoxiously long, as his writing generally is. And what was this series of essays about? Well, in a nutshell, it was about how neoliberals, far-right people that have neither the capacity nor the interest to do things like save lives or run a healthcare system, how neoliberals could, theoretically, in his world of fantasy, respond appropriately to the pandemic and stop people from dying. So also running interference for private capital. And what is the result? Millions of people have died. There is still, to this day, not an appropriate, even a semblance of an appropriate pandemic response. What we have is people putting a Band-Aid in a gaping gunshot wound in the form of a vaccine. You're taking a vaccine. The vaccine is for a variant of coronavirus that was spreading through the country last year when you're getting this booster. And the versions that are spreading through the country now you're not protected from. So it slows the spread a little bit. It doesn't physically protect you from anything. It doesn't really slow the spread. And you have no mask mandates. You have no public health service measures of the kind that could have easily all stopped at this thing. If simply we've done nothing at all, not talked about coronavirus at all, but just had one simple kind of statement from public health service saying there's an extremely high risk of death from a pathogen. Everyone is required to wear a mask. If you spread propaganda or resist this, you are in violation of the law. And if 95% of people that then wear a mask every time they go into public space or indoors with more than one person, this thing never would have spread anywhere, right? But fascists don't care about any of that because the only thing that fascists really wanted in this situation was to build this new business model, $1 trillion business model of vaccines that don't really work. They work in the ineffective way that I described, and continuing to sell and grow that $1 trillion business by failing to serve these people in these other areas. So this is who the Transhumanist Party is. Capitalism, by definition, is right wing. That's the language. That's why these kind of people like to obfuscate the notion of left or right, because people fighting for a humane and sustainable economic system are anti-capitalist. They're on the left, and people to the right of them, people upholding basically all of the liberals and everyone of the capitalist class is right wing. And so further right still are these neoliberals, people like the Transhumanist Party, and you know, it's actually well understood that this term, privatization, was coined by literal fucking Nazis. Now, nobody was using this word before the rise of European fascism started using this word privatization, and that's a word of neoliberalism today. These people are indistinguishable from fascists in every way that matters. The fact that we don't include them as being fascists is a kind of movie logic that we apply to politics, where the only people who are fascists are people with funny mustaches and marching in a weird way, and not actually the people who believe the exact same things and cause just as much harm. Right? Nazis were pretty bad people. There's no denying that. They killed millions and millions of people for insane reasons. But one thing that they didn't do is kill the entire fucking planet, like the fascist USA has done. So you have people like Louis Arroyo, who's just posting garbage all over social media. And he's fixating on one or two personalities who I guess are considered to be Marxists, who maybe are not as troubling to these right-wing transhumanists as other Marxists would be. And not to say that those people have no merit or in their ideas, but he's just posting this garbage over and over, and he's saying, I'm a transhumanist and I work also work with the Communist Party of the United States of America, which is itself not really a great organization, kind of for the same reasons, not quite to the same degree, but there's a good deal of evidence that they were captured by the State Department and have had a great deal of infiltration in the 100+ years of their existence, and basically captured in the McCarthy era, and they've virtually done nothing since. They don't run candidates. They kind of have some, like the Libertarian Party, they kind of have some organization, some book clubs. They don't have the kind of things like the Libertarian Party has been able to buy, which is ballot access. The Libertarian Party is just kind of a paper tiger. They have no real important message. They run interference for fascists, but people are spending money on this, so they're considered to be a real party. They have ballot access and visibility, and their mouthpieces can sometimes go on larger news channels and so forth. The Communist Party has none of that, but they have some of the same failings. It would, I guess, be not be suitable for a captured organization to be given ballot access as communists, because that would be too much visibility for a communist. So the point is that this Communist Party arguably hasn't operated in the way that any Communist Party should, or certainly a vanguard party should, and some of those failings are to do with this corruption across the United States, which is almost ubiquitous, right? The problems of fascism in the United States are not specifically landing on Gennady Stolyarov and Sold Misfit, right? This tech filth is a microcosm of the fascist capture of the United States itself. But it's worse. Arguably, the people like the Transhumanist Party and techno-fascists more broadly, which is overwhelmingly who tech people are. Not all of them are as bad as Gennady Stolyarov, but they are nevertheless people who are serving imperialism and elitism and an inhumane and unsustainable economic system to high degrees. And why would I say that these people are worse than the libertarians who have a more profile than they do? Well, you know that your planet is dying. This is undeniable, and you know that something needs to be done, and you haven't quite come to the place of figuring out what to do about that. And then there are these people in the United States called Silicon Valley, right, who are basically almost all of the ones of any significance or influence are people who have worked for the military-industrial complex, the number one polluter in the world. That's almost every mega million or multi-billion dollar tech operation has had sweetheart deals with this fascist government. They're military contractors, coded as being nice, gentle teddy bears when they're not. So here in this landscape, this hellscape of U.S. fascism killing the planet, we have this tool itself, which is why these people have captured this, quote, Silicon Valley, why fascists have captured this, because these tools themselves, advanced computing, and emerging technology along those lines, are the most powerful tools that have ever existed. And it's why, in my view, the USSR was illegally disbanded by the fascist West and its ringleader, the fascist USA, because at this time, this was a time when computing systems were becoming household objects, not merely things that existed in big giant server rooms for larger operations and governments. So these were becoming household objects, and this was in the 1960s and 70s. These were starting to become household objects. By the 1970s, these were household objects. By the 1980s, these were fairly commonplace household objects in the West. At that time, it was also becoming possible for them to be networked. So a world that has people connected in this way, this is a world that sparked the imagination of that time. Unfortunately, fascist capture has perverted that since, but it sparked the imagination of we could have a utopian outcome because of this technologically mediated connectivity. And while that may seem like something from a science fiction novel, it's taken very seriously by the master manipulators of the capitalist class. People like the people who start the Transhumanist Party and pretend to be something that they're not. It's taken seriously by people, people who basically employees of the Rand Corporation, organizations like that, people who get paid to make sure that fascists stay in power. And think about all of these things. And they recognize that this is essentially something that could be a catalyst, a bootloader for a global socialist revolution. And they didn't want that to happen. So they haven't ever wanted that to happen because for a humane and sustainable economic system to exist, there must be the abolition of private wealth. You cannot have both of those things. Democratic socialists will tell you that you can. Those are people who are not socialists, and they will not stop this capitalism's climate apocalypse from occurring. They're false friends, like anarchists. If you meet people along these lines who maybe have some of the same good ideas, you're not doing them a disservice by saying some of the ideas that you have are bad. You're doing them a service. Anarchism is not a person. Capitalist collaboration is not a person. These are bad ideas and institutions that you are well within your rights to challenge. And one of the silliest ideas of the early 20th century is that ideologies of deeply troubled ideas are people, and that you're doing violence to people when you challenge them. You're doing a service to anarchists when you convince them to become communists. You're doing a service to democratic socialists when you convince them to become communists. If you don't think so, check back in another 30 years, and when you probably and you and your descendants will probably be deceased because a capitalist killed the entire planet. Check back with me and see if maybe you shouldn't have fought a little bit harder for a humane and sustainable economic system. So there is the main point is don't join a false organization like the Transhumanist Party. What they're trying to do is create these little pockets of book clubs and things that are sheepdogging people into a kind of organization and a kind of discourse of little relevance to actually building the techno-utopian outcomes that they describe, or building anything, with absent even this most powerful tool in history, advanced computing. It would still be possible to build a humane and sustainable economic system historically or even today. But I contend, and this is controversial among Marxists, I guess, that because of this time frame and because of this playing field of advanced technology having spread around the world, that it behooves us to use this most powerful tool in service to a communist techno revolution. And that is why this is called the Techno Communism Show. And I made mention of my silly hat. It's very hot. I shouldn't be wearing it. This is a symbol, the Ouroboros, which is a snake eating its own tail. It's considered a kind of a cult symbol, a complex symbology along those lines. But the reason I use it is because I believe it also evokes specifically a transhumanist idea of using emerging technology to bring humanity together as one, and bring about things like universal super longevity, which will not be achieved by democratic socialists, by these neoliberals who are worse still in your lifetime. It should be very cold comfort for you to imagine that maybe a few million people will survive on Earth and rebuild something better by the year 2525, right? Because this could happen now if you grew a pair.